help us find our mom's killers?
Tell me, what was your mom's name?
The first sound is rain, not gentle rain. Not the kind that patters softly on rooftops and makes people feel poetic. This is Seoul rain. Cold, relentless, diagonal. The kind that comes with wind that cuts through expensive suits and reminds even powerful men that the sky answers to no one. The cemetery stretches across a hill on the eastern edge of the city, rows of gray stone markers disappearing into morning fog. Black umbrellas move like slow-floating petals. Men in dark suits stand in clusters, faces unreadable, eyes scanning. They are not here to grieve. They are here to be seen and to see. At the center of it all, Jae-Hyun Park stands alone. The rain soaks his shoulders, plasters his dark hair flat against his forehead, but he does not move, and he stares at the casket lowered into the ground with the expression of a man watching something he already finished mourning 3 days ago. A jaw that never softens, eyes the color of deep water, a stillness so absolute that the men around him give him a full meter of empty space in every direction. A voice, his own, cuts through in narration. In my world, people don't die. They get erased. My brother Min Jun was 31 years old. He had a smile that could convince you the sun was still out at midnight. And now he is in the ground. And I am standing here, wondering if I should feel something. I don't. I stopped feeling things a long time ago. He watches the dirt fall. Behind him, the suited men shift. 2 of them exchange a glance. Whatever is in that glance, neither of them dare say it out loud. The priest finishes speaking. The crowd begins to thin. The umbrellas retreat. And then the cemetery grows quiet enough that Jae-Hyun can hear the rain hitting the casket, a sound like fingers tapping, impatient. He turns to leave. That is when he feels it. A small hand slipping into his, fingers wrapping around 2 of his fingers, tiny, certain, warm despite the cold. He looks down. 2 little girls stand on either side of him. Identical. They are perhaps 8 years old, maybe 9. Dark skin glistening with rain, natural hair pulled back in neat puffs that the weather is now doing its best to undo. Their eyes are enormous and still. Not frightened, not shy, not the way children look when they approach a stranger. They look at him the way you look at someone you have already decided something about. His bodyguard takes 1 step forward, hand moving to his jacket. Jae-Hyun raises 1 finger. The bodyguard stops. He looks at the girls. Neither of them flinches. The one on his left speaks first. Her voice is soft but precise, like a child who has practiced this sentence many times in a quiet room. Will you help us find our mother's killers? Jae-Hyun blinks. Once. He opens his mouth, closes it. The one on his right leans forward just slightly and says the thing that stops the world. Your family killed her. The rain keeps falling. The wind keeps blowing. Somewhere behind him, one of his men shifts his weight on the wet grass. And Jae-Hyun Park, a man who has never flinched, never stumbled, never shown an open nerve to another human being in his adult life, goes completely, utterly still. If you're already hooked, and we know you are, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because this is one story you do not want to miss a single episode of. Jae-Hyun Park does not lose sleep. He gave that up at 22 when he took over his father's operations after the man who was running the Eastern District decided to steal from the family and ended up in the Han River wearing a pair of concrete boots that weren't in the original outfit. He learned very early that sleep is a vulnerability. But that night, in his penthouse 34 floors above the lights of Seoul, Jae-Hyun sits in an armchair by the floor-to-ceiling window and watches the city breathe below him. And he does not sleep. Not because of grief. He will process that quietly, efficiently, alone. He does not sleep because of 2 little girls with rain-wet hair and impossible eyes. He makes 3 calls before sunrise. By morning, he knows their names. Amara and Amari Okoye, 8 years old. Born in Lagos, raised partly in Seoul when their mother relocated for work. Their mother's name was Nkechi Okoye, Nigerian, 34 years old. Reported dead 6 weeks ago. Cause of death listed as a car accident on a rain-slicked road in the outskirts of Seoul. Jae-Hyun reads the accident report twice. Then he sets it down on his glass desk and sits back. "That's not a car accident," he says to no one. His head of intelligence, a thin man named Woo Sung with reading glasses he never actually uses for reading, stands across from him with a tablet. "No, sir. Based on what we've pulled so far, the impact angles, the condition of the vehicle, the location, someone staged it." "Who reported finding the car?" Woo Sung hesitates. "An anonymous tip." "Of course it was." Jae-Hyun stands up, straightening his cuffs. "Find out who Nkechi Okoye was, what she did, who she knew, who she was afraid of, and find out where those girls are staying." "Already on it. They're currently in the care of their aunt." A pause. "A woman named Zanaya Okoye." "Get me an address." The apartment building is not in a wealthy neighborhood. It is clean, modest, the kind of place where people work hard and keep their heads down. Jae-Hyun arrives without his usual convoy. One car, one driver. He stands at the door on the 4th floor for a moment before knocking, and he cannot entirely explain to himself why he hesitates. He knocks. Why, and the woman who opens the door is not what he expected, though he is not sure what he expected. She is tall, with her sister's cheekbones, and none of her sister's reported gentleness. She wears a black dress, and her eyes are red-rimmed from recent crying. And when she sees Jae-Hyun standing in her hallway, she goes rigid in a way that is not fear. It is fury, barely contained. "Zanaya Okoye," he says. "I know who I am." Her voice is low and controlled. "The question is why you're standing at my door. The girls came to me at the funeral." Something moves in her expression. She turns her head slightly toward the interior of the apartment. Then she steps into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind her so the girls cannot hear. "I know," she says, "and I told them not to. And I told them to stay away from anything connected to that family. To your family. You know who I am? I know exactly who you are. Your name is Jae-Hyun Park. Your father runs half the organized crime in this city. Your family has its hands in everything from construction contracts to shipping. And my sister is dead." Her jaw tightens. "So whatever you're here to offer, protection, information, a deal, the answer is no. Stay away from my nieces. I want to find out what happened to their mother." "And what? You think I believe that?" She steps closer, and she does not look the least bit intimidated by the fact that he is taller, heavier, and has a man waiting in a car downstairs who could end a conversation in 3 seconds. "You think I don't know how this works? Someone from your world comes to us, says all the right things, and then we end up in a car accident too?" Jae-Hyun looks at her steadily. "I don't know what happened to your sister. I'm trying to find out." "Then find out on your own. Leave my family alone." She goes back inside and the door closes. Jae-Hyun stands in the empty hallway for a moment. Then he goes back downstairs. He doesn't leave. He sits in the car, half a block down the street, and he tells his driver to stay. Every instinct is telling him not to go far. It takes 40 minutes. Then one of the ground floor windows of the building shatters. Inside the apartment, Amara grabs her sister's arm the moment they hear the sound from downstairs. They do not scream. They do not run for the window. And they press themselves against the hallway wall and they wait. 2 little girls who have already seen enough of the world to know that screaming draws attention, and attention is dangerous. Zanaya comes out of the kitchen with a knife in her hand before the echo of the window finishes. 2 men in gray jackets are already on the stairs. She does not know where they came from. She does not know how they got the building door open. She knows only that they are moving fast and they are not police. Police announce themselves. Police wear uniforms. Police do not move like this. Fluid and purposeful and professional. Girls, bedroom, under the bed, now. Aunt Zanaya, now Amara. They move. Zanaya plants herself in the hallway. The first man reaches the apartment door, and then something extraordinary happens. The door comes open from the outside, not broken, not forced, opened with a key that no one in that building has ever seen, and Jae-Hyun Park walks in with his driver 2 steps behind him, and the man in the gray jacket has exactly 1 second to decide what to do before Jae-Hyun's elbow connects with his jaw, and he folds. What follows is brief and violent and efficient. Controlled brutality from years of practice, not rage, not showing off. The second man in the gray jacket makes it as far as the kitchen doorway before he meets the floor. Silence. Jae-Hyun straightens up, adjusts his collar. He looks at Zanaya. She still has the knife. "You can put that down," he says. "I'll decide when to put it down." Her voice shakes slightly. Not from fear, he realizes, but from adrenaline. "Who are those men?" "I don't know yet, but I will." He looks toward the bedroom hallway. "Are the girls? They're fine. No thanks to you being here." "No. No thanks to whoever sent those men." He looks at her directly. "This isn't connected to me. I was sitting outside because I didn't feel right about leaving. My instinct was correct. You're welcome." Zanaya stares at him. The knife drops slowly to her side. "Who sent them?" she asks. "Someone who doesn't want those girls talking." He reaches into his jacket pocket and produces his phone. "Which means your sister was involved in something that someone very powerful once buried. And now they know the girls were at that funeral. They know the girls spoke to me. So by coming here, you made it worse. By coming here, I stopped two men from getting through that door. But yes, the situation has escalated. Which means you and the girls need to move, tonight." Zanaya looks at him for a long time. Her expression is complicated, not gratitude, not trust, not warmth, something more reluctant and furious than all of those things. "I'm not going anywhere with you," she says. "You don't have to go with me. I have a safe house. I am not sending my nieces to a place controlled by your family." "Then come with them." He says it flatly, no heat in it. "I understand your mistrust. I would feel the same in your position. But those men will send more when these two don't report back. You have maybe 4 hours before someone drives past this building, so make a decision." Zanaya's jaw is so tight she might crack a tooth. She makes the decision. The safe house is a property Jae-Hyun keeps completely off the books. A house in a quiet, residential neighborhood maintained by a woman named Mrs. O, who is 63 years old, pretends to be a housekeeper, and could dismantle a firearm in the dark faster than most operatives. She greets them at the door without surprise, takes one look at the twins, and immediately produces hot cocoa and dry towels. Amara and Amari sit at the kitchen table. They drink their cocoa. They watch Jae-Hyun the way cats watch something they are not yet sure about. Steadily, without blinking, turning nothing into an expression. Zanaya stands in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, watching all of it. Jae-Hyun sits across from the twins. He leans forward, forearms on the table, and he speaks to them directly. Not the way adults usually speak to children, not the softened, simplified version people use when they think small humans can't handle real information. Directly, the way one person speaks to another. "You said my family killed your mother." Amara sets down her cup. "Yes." "What did you see?" Amara and Amari exchange a look. One of those twin communications that happens entirely without sound, a language of micro-expressions and tiny gestures developed over 8 years of being the only person who truly understands the other person. Amari speaks this time. "We were in the car with Mommy. Before it happened. We were in the back seat. Mommy told us to close our eyes, but we didn't." "What did you see?" "A black car came from the side. Very fast. It hit Mommy's car, but before another car had stopped in front. Mommy braked and the men got out. Men plural. 3 men. Each one had a phone. He was on the phone while the other 2 went to the car. We were in the back. Mommy told us to run and not look back. We ran." Amari's voice does not waver. She delivers this information the way a surgeon delivers a diagnosis. Clear, precise, without self-indulgence. "We hid behind a wall. We heard everything." "What did you hear?" A pause. Amara reaches into the pocket of her little coat and produces a folded piece of paper. She unfolds it on the table and smooths it flat with both palms. On the paper, in a child's careful handwriting, is a symbol. A circle, bisected by 2 diagonal lines, with a sequence of characters beneath it. Jae-Hyun looks at it. Something happens to his face, so brief that only Zanaya, watching from the doorway, catches it. A flash of something. Recognition. Shock. Then the mask comes back down. "Where did you see this?" he asks. "The man on the phone had it on his jacket," Amara says. "Right here." She points to the left breast of her own coat. like a badge or a pin. Jae-Hyun picks up the paper. He stares at it for 3 more seconds. Then he carefully folds it and puts it in his own pocket. Because that symbol, that specific symbol, belongs to exactly one organization in Seoul. And that organization belongs to his father. He does not sleep that night either. He sits in the room they have given him in the safe house, and he reads everything Woo-sung sends him about Nkechi Okoye. He reads it the way a man reads something he doesn't want to understand. Slowly going back over sentences looking for other meanings, but the other meanings don't appear. Nkechi Okoye was not just a woman who relocated to Seoul for work. She was a journalist, investigative. She had been in Seoul for 2 years, and in that time she had been building a file, a very large, very detailed file, on money laundering operations connected to the Park family's construction arm. She had sources inside the operation. She had documents. She had photographs. She had, according to a partial digital trail Woo-sung managed to reconstruct, been corresponding with someone inside the family. Someone who had been feeding her information. Jae-Hyun stares at the name at the end of that correspondence trail for a very long time. Jae-Hyun Park. His dead brother. In the morning, he finds Zanaya in the small garden behind the house. She is sitting on a stone bench with a cup of tea going cold in her hands, staring at nothing. And she does not hear him come out because she is somewhere else entirely. Some internal country of grief where people go when they have been crying alone and don't want anyone to know. He almost goes back inside. Then he sits on the other end of the bench. They are quiet for a full minute. A bird lands on the wall at the far end of the garden, studies them briefly and leaves. The sky is the color of wet concrete. Somewhere inside the house, Mrs. O is making breakfast. They can smell it, faint and warm. She was the brave one, Zanaya says finally, not to him, to the air. Nkechi was always the one who couldn't let things go. When we were children and she saw something wrong, she couldn't walk past it. She had to fix it. Had to fight it. A pause. I used to tell her it would get her killed. I'm sorry. Zanaya turns to look at him. Her eyes are red again, but her voice is steady. Are you? Yes. Why? Your family, your people, I don't know everything yet, he says. But what I do know is that my brother was involved. He was communicating with your sister. He was feeding her information. Zanaya blinks. The information takes a moment to land. Why would he do that? That's the question. He looks out at the small garden, the gray morning sky, the bare branches of a tree doing its best. I thought he was simply someone who stayed at the edges. Not as involved as me. Clean almost. I protected him from the worst of it. His jaw tightens slightly. I thought I was protecting him. You thought wrong. Clearly. She turns away again. She's wrapping her arms around herself against something internal. You know what the worst part is? She says. Nkechi called me 2 weeks before she died. She was excited. Not frightened. Excited. She said she had a source inside the Park family who was ready to go on the record. She said, Zena, this is the one. This is the story that changes everything. She stops. I told her to be careful. She said she would be. And I thought, because she had someone on the inside, because she wasn't alone. You thought it would be safer, Jae-Hyun says quietly. Yes. Her voice fractures. Just barely. Then it holds again. I thought having your brother made her safer. And instead it made her more dangerous to the people who needed to keep things buried. He finishes. My brother was trying to protect her and being used against her at the same time. That is the kind of position my father specializes in building. Another silence. This one is different from the first. Less hostile, more complicated. The kind of silence that happens when two people who don't like each other are discovering they might understand each other. Those girls, Zanaya says, they are not normal children. No. They never have been. Even before their mother died, they were always too still, too watching. Like they were born already knowing things. She wraps both hands around her teacup. They told me the night it happened, they said, Mommy told us to remember everything, Aunt Zena. So we did. 8 years old, in shock, and they just remembered all of it. Jae-Hyun is quiet. They chose you, Zanaya says. Not out of everyone at that funeral, all of those important men. They walked to you. I need to know why. I've been wondering the same thing. She looks at him for a moment. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone worse. She stands up, collecting her cold tea. Don't mistake that for trust. I won't. She goes inside. He stays in the garden a little longer, thinking about his brother, and about a woman named Nkichi who couldn't walk past something wrong, and about the two little girls who inherited her certainty and applied it, with devastating precision, to him. By afternoon, Woo-sung has more. Jae-Hyun takes the call in the small study, door closed. What Woo-sung tells him restructures several things he thought he understood about his brother. So Min-jun had been living a double life for at least 18 months before his death. He had accounts Jae-Hyun didn't know about. He had meetings that were logged but never explained. He had been, it appears, slowly and methodically documenting the family's operations, not to expose them initially. He had started doing it as leverage, insurance, because he had seen something, a specific transaction, a specific instruction from their father, that had frightened him. And Min-jun's response to fear, it turned out, was to collect information. Then he met Nkechi. And something changed. Whether it was conscience or attachment or something else entirely, Min-jun began actually cooperating with her. Passing her documents, explaining the structure of the money flows. He was going to leave. He had purchased 2 plane tickets, himself and someone unnamed, 6 days before he died. 6 days before he died. Jae-Hyun closes his eyes for a moment. What was the cause of death, he asks, even though he already knows the answer is probably not what was on the report. Cardiac event, Woo-sung says. He was 31 and completely healthy. No prior cardiac history. Who had access to him in the 48 hours before? A pause that tells Jae-Hyun everything, before the words do. Records show he had dinner with Chairman Park the night before. Jae-Hyun ends the call. He sits in the study for 11 minutes. Then he goes to find the twins. They are in the living room with Mrs. Oh, who is teaching them to fold paper cranes. They are focused on the task with that particular twin intensity. Both bent over the table, on small hands, precise, identical frowns of concentration. Jae-Hyun sits in the armchair across from them. I need to ask you something, he says. Amara looks up, then Amari. Did you ever meet my brother Min-jun before your mother died? The twins exchange that look again. Yes, Amara says. He keeps his face neutral. When? Many times, Amari says. Uncle Min-jun used to come to our house. Him and Mommy would talk for a long time. Sometimes we would bring them tea. Uncle, Jae-Hyun repeats softly. He told us to call him that, Amara explains. Her voice drops just slightly. He was kind. He used to bring us books. Korean picture books. He was teaching us Korean. Jae-Hyun's hands tighten on the armrest, almost imperceptibly. Did he come to see your mother the night she died? This is when the dynamic in the room shifts, and both girls go very still. Even Mrs. O, folding her own crane in the corner, senses it and quietly gathers her things and leaves. Amara and Amari look at each other for a long time, longer than usual. Then Amari says, very quietly, he was outside the house, before we left in the car. He was outside. He was in a car down the street. We saw him from the window when Mommy was getting our coats. Mommy saw him too. Amari folds her hands on the table. Mommy told us to be quiet. She called someone on the phone. She was scared, but she still got in the car. Yes. And your uncle, he followed us, at first. Amara's voice is almost a whisper now. But then his car went a different way. And then the other car came. Jae-Hyun sits with that for a moment. Was he involved? He asks. He doesn't know why he is asking children. Yeah, but they were there, and they remember everything. And sometimes the truth lives in the most unexpected witnesses. Amara looks at him. Something in her enormous dark eyes is older than 8 years old. We don't know, she says. But we know he was scared too. That night Zanaya finds Jae-Hyun in the kitchen. He is making tea. Badly, the way men who have never made their own tea make tea, looking at the kettle as though it has personally offended him. She takes it out of his hand without asking and finishes it properly. "Your brother knew," she says. "Yes." "Do you think he set her up?" "I don't know." He accepts the tea she hands him. "I think he was being controlled. I think my father found out what Minjun was doing and used that, threatened him, forced him to cooperate, and then eliminated both of them once they were no longer useful." Zanaya sits down at the table. "Your father killed both of them." "I believe so, yes." "And you're going to what? Turn against your own father?" "He killed my brother." She looks at him across the table. He is looking at his tea. There is something exposed in his expression that she has not seen before. Not grief exactly, not anger. Something messier than either of those things. The look of someone who has just discovered that the world they built their entire self on was constructed on a lie. "I understand loyalty," she says carefully. "My family, where I come from, you don't betray your blood. It is not a simple thing." "No." His jaw works. "It's not simple. But he killed Nkichi." Her voice stays controlled, but just barely. "He killed my sister. He killed those girls' mother. And he put your brother in the ground." "I know." "Then what are you waiting for?" He looks up at her. "I'm waiting to be sure. I'm not going against my father on suspicion. When I move, and if I move, I need everything. Every piece, every proof. Because if I try and I fail..." He stops. "Those girls won't be safe anymore. You won't be safe." She holds his gaze. There is a strange charged silence between them. The kind that shouldn't exist between people who met 3 days ago and began the relationship in active hostility. And yet, "Then let's get everything," she says. The next 72 hours move fast. Woo-sung pulls the financial records. A contact inside the police department pulls the original accident investigation. Jae-Hyun reaches out, carefully, to 2 of his father's associates, men who have worked for the Park family for decades and who have their own reasons for quiet discontent. What comes back is worse than what he expected. It is not just Nkechi. There are 3 other names. 3 other people who got too close to the Park family's money laundering architecture in the past 4 years and ended up dead in circumstances that were slightly but not convincingly accidental. Nkechi just had the misfortune of getting the furthest, and Minjun had the misfortune of caring too much. Jae-Hyun lays the documents across the dining table of the safe house and looks at the shape of it. It is a clean, methodical, decades-long pattern of elimination. His father operates this way. Not with heat, not with passion, but with the cold regularity of someone pruning a garden. And he feels sick. He has not felt sick about things connected to his family in a very long time. He had decided somewhere around age 25 that the best way to survive the world he was born into was not to feel it. And now he feels it. And it is worse than he remembered. Zanaya comes to stand beside him, looking at the table. She doesn't say anything. She reads it all. The files, the names, the dates, the pattern. And her breathing changes slightly, and she still doesn't say anything. And he is grateful for that. Then Amara's voice comes from the doorway. "There's one more." They both turn. The twins stand in the doorway in their pajamas. "What do you mean?" Jae-Hyun asks. Amara walks to the table and looks at the documents. She studies them with an expression that would be alarming on any child, but is especially alarming on an 8-year-old who has just climbed out of bed. She points to a date. "We heard one of the men on the phone say a name. The night Mommy died. The one who was giving the order." She looks up at Jae-Hyun. "We didn't know if it was important. We didn't know if we could trust you with it." "And now?" he asks. Amara looks at him steadily. "Now we've been watching you for 4 days. We think you're ready." In any other context, this would be funny. A child deciding whether an adult is ready for information. But there is nothing funny in this room. "Tell me," Jae-Hyun says. "The name they said was Han," Amari says from the doorway. "Minister Han." Jae-Hyun goes very still. Because Minister Han is not just a government official. Minister Han is one of his father's oldest partners. Minister Han sits on 3 regulatory boards. Minister Han has enough political protection to make a direct confrontation catastrophic. This is now so much bigger than a family reckoning. Zanaya looks at Jae-Hyun. How high does this go? He doesn't answer immediately. High enough, he says, that we need to be very, very careful. 3 days pass in the safe house. They fall into a strange, improbable rhythm. Jae-Hyun on calls and laptops in the study, Zanaya managing the girls, Mrs. O feeding everyone with the methodical enthusiasm of someone who believes most problems can be at least partially addressed with good food. The twins do homework that Zanaya has printed from an online curriculum. They fold cranes. They watch Jae-Hyun the way they watch everything. With that steady, unnerving attention, Mas as if everything is potentially important. On the second night, Amara finds Jae-Hyun standing at the window in the dark. She doesn't say anything. She stands beside him and also looks out at the quiet street. "Do you miss your brother?" she asks. He considers the question the way he considers most things from these children. Seriously, without condescension. Yes, in a complicated way. What does complicated mean when you miss someone? It means you love them and you're also angry at them and you're sad for them, and you can't put those things in any particular order. Amara absorbs this. I feel that about Mommy sometimes. I'm sad she's gone. And I'm angry she didn't take us away when she still could. And then I feel bad for being angry. Jae-Hyun looks down at her. That is a very honest thing to feel, he says. Amari says it's okay. She says Mommy would understand. Amari is right. They stand in the dark together for another minute. Then Amara goes back to bed without another word, and Jae-Hyun remains at the window. And for the first time in 3 days, he doesn't feel entirely alone in the room. The next morning brings something that breaks the fragile rhythm. One of Jae-Hyun's informants inside his father's organization sends a single message. No context. Just a photograph. It is a photograph of the safe house, taken from the street, yesterday. Jae-Hyun is on his feet before he finishes processing what he is looking at. He finds Woo Sung's number and calls, pacing. We've been located, not compromised yet. They're watching, not moving. Which means they want to know my movements before they act. He stops by the window. Sorry, staying back from it. How long do we have? If they follow normal protocol, they'll observe for 48 hours before escalating. But sir, your father has changed some of the protocols since Min-Jun. He's become less predictable. Get me everything you have on who might have followed us here. And get me an alternative location. He finds Zanaya in the kitchen. He shows her the photograph. She doesn't panic. She goes still the way she always does when something is serious, preserving energy for what comes next. How long? She asks. Maybe a day, maybe less. The girls, they cannot know this is urgent. If they panic, they won't panic, Zanaya says. They never panic. That's almost more unsettling. She leans against the counter. What do? We move, carefully, tonight. And before we do, he sets his phone on the table. I need to do something first. I need to go see my father. Zanaya's eyes sharpen. Why? Because I need to hear it from him. I need to look him in the face when he says it. He picks up his phone again. And because if I'm going to burn this down, I want to be absolutely sure there's no version of events I haven't considered. No explanation I've missed. You're looking for a reason to not believe it. He meets her gaze. Yes. You won't find one. I know, he says, but I need to look. She watches him for a moment. Something in her expression moves. The slightest yielding, like a wall that is not falling, but is considering its options. Be careful, she says. Not warmly, practically, but she says it. He goes to see his father. He drives alone. Not because he doesn't want backup, but because if he brings backup to this meeting, his father will know immediately that the conversation is not routine, and Chairman Park will prepare. Jae-Hyun needs him unprepared. Chairman Park's private residence sits behind walls and cameras and a gate that takes 2 separate clearances to pass. The old man is in his study when Jae-Hyun arrives, a room full of books he has never read, paintings he bought as investments, and a desk the size of a dining table behind which he sits with the posture of a man who has spent 50 years making other men feel small. The room smells of cedarwood and cold power. Jae-Hyun grew up afraid of this room. He stopped being afraid of it at 22. He is not afraid now, but the muscle memory of fear is still there. A ghost the body never fully releases. And he is 70 years old and he looks 60. He has his son's jaw and his son's eyes and none of his son's capacity for anything resembling doubt. "You look tired," Chairman Park says. "I'm fine. You've been staying off grid. My people said they couldn't locate you for 3 days." He says this lightly, pleasantly, the way he says everything that is actually a threat. "I needed space, after Min-jun." Of course. The old man's expression softens into something practiced. "He was your brother. Grief takes time." "Yes." Jae-Hyun sits across from him. He keeps his hands relaxed. His breathing even. "I've been thinking about him. About who he was spending time with before he died." Min-jun had many connections. He was a social man. He was meeting with a journalist, Nkechi Okoye, a Nigerian woman investigating the family's construction accounts. He watches his father's face. "Did you know?" The silence that follows is exactly 2 seconds long. In a normal conversation, 2 seconds is nothing. In this conversation, it is a complete confession. "Where did you hear this?" Chairman Park asks. "Does it matter?" "It matters." The pleasant tone has not left. Because whoever is giving you this information has an agenda. You understand how these things work, Jae-Hyun. People plant stories. People want to destabilize the family. You can't allow grief to make you credulous. Was Min-jun working against us? Min-jun was confused. He was young. He was making mistakes. A pause. "I handled it." Jae-Hyun feels the words land in his chest like something cold. "You handled it," he repeats. The journalist was a problem that needed to be resolved. Min-jun, the old man's voice does not change pitch. Min-jun had become a liability. I tried to bring him back. He wouldn't come. So I handled it. This is what leadership is. This is what I have been trying to teach you your entire life. You killed your own son. I protected the family. Jae-Hyun stands up. His hands are at his sides. Everything in him that has been cauterized and hardened over 15 years is right now, in this moment, the only thing standing between him and something he would not recover from. "Get out," Chairman Park says, and for the first time the pleasantness is entirely gone. "Go back to wherever you've been hiding and remember who built everything you have. And remember that I can take it just as easily." Is that a threat? It is a fact. The old man leans forward. "Those girls, I know you have them. I want them dealt with, Jae-Hyun. They are loose ends." "Those girls," Jae-Hyun says very quietly, "are 8 years old. Age is irrelevant. They are witnesses." He looks at his father, or really looks at him perhaps for the first time in years. And what he sees is not a powerful man. What he sees is a person who hollowed himself out so completely in the service of control that there is nothing left inside but mechanism. He turns and walks out. He does not run. He walks, out of the study, through the marble hallway, past the guards who are too well trained to react to his pace, through the gate and into the car. He sits in the car for a full minute with his hands on the steering wheel. The engine is off. Rain has started again. Of course it has, pattering against the windshield, blurring the lit windows of his father's residence into smears of yellow and white. He thinks about Min-jun at 11 years old, following him around the house, trying to copy everything he did. He thinks about Min-jun at 20, asking him once, very quietly, if there was a way out of the family business that didn't end badly. Jae-Hyun had laughed it off. He had said, "You don't need a way out. You're not even really in it." He had believed that. He had protected his brother, or thought he had, by keeping him at the margins. Close enough to be safe under the family name, far enough from the operations to keep his hands clean. And he had not understood that their father counted clean hands as a repudiation. He had not understood that Min-jun's conscience, the thing Jae-Hyun had always privately admired and outwardly dismissed, would eventually be the thing that got him killed. He starts the engine. He calls Woo-sung. "I need everything compiled. Every document, every record, every transaction. I need it all, and I need it tonight." "Sir, everything, Woo-sung." Not a summary, everything. Can you do that? A pause. Yes, sir. Don't use the office servers. Personal drive only. And Woo-sung. He looks in the rearview mirror at the gates of his father's house, disappearing behind him. If anyone asks where you are tonight, you are home. He gets back to the safe house at midnight. Zanaya is still awake. She has been sitting at the table with her sister's research, Nkechi's original files, sent to her by a source of Nkechi's who survived. And when Jae-Hyun comes in and sits down and puts his head in his hands for exactly 5 seconds, and then lifts it back up, she reads all of it in his face before he says a word. He admitted it, she says. He admitted it. She closes the folder in front of her. She does not cry. She has run out of tears for tonight, and what is in her expression now is something harder and quieter than grief, the face of someone who has fully accepted a terrible thing and is now deciding what to do with it. What exactly did he say? Jae-Hyun sits back in the chair. He said Minjun had become a liability, that Nkechi was a problem that needed to be resolved. He didn't flinch, and he didn't lower his voice. He pauses. He said it the way you'd say you had a leak fixed. Just a thing that needed doing. Zanaya is quiet. He called it protecting the family, Jae-Hyun continues. He said it as though that phrase ends every argument, as though nothing that comes before it matters once you say it. He looks at his hands on the table, the hands he has used over 15 years to do things he has never allowed himself to fully examine. I wonder how many times he said that when I was young. How many things he ended with that sentence that I was too young to ask questions about. Did you ask questions? No, I was raised not to. His jaw works. We both were. Minjun and I. Questions they were considered a kind of disloyalty. You trusted the family because the family survived. Because the family had survived for 50 years through things that should have destroyed it. You didn't question the method. You trusted the outcome. He stops. Minjun started questioning. I didn't. And I was the loyal one. And I am the one sitting here, and he is in the ground. The kitchen is very quiet. He wants the girls dead, Jae-Hyun says. Then we don't give him access to them. It's more complicated than that. My father has... He stops, starts again. He has arrangements with Minister Han. If we go to the police, Han controls too many of the people who would investigate. If I go after my father directly, it becomes a war inside the organization, and people get caught in that. Then what? The evidence, all of it. The files Nkechi built, the financial records, the communications between Minjun and Nkechi, it's the connections to Han. He looks at her. We release it, not to the police, to journalists, multiple outlets simultaneously, international press. We make it too big and too loud to bury. Zanaya is quiet for a moment. Your father destroyed Nkechi's evidence. He thought he did. He didn't know about the backup. He slides a drive across the table toward her. Minjun kept a copy. He hid it well. Not well enough that I couldn't find it, but well enough that our father didn't. She looks at the drive. She looks at him. You're going to burn your family down, she says. I'm going to burn down what my family built. What they built was wrong. He meets her eyes. Your sister died trying to expose it. My brother died trying to help her. The least I can do is finish it. Zanaya picks up the drive. She turns it over in her hand. If this goes wrong, I know. If they come for the girls, they won't get to the girls. She looks at him for a long moment. Something in her expression shifts, not softening exactly, but opening, like a door that has been stuck and finally gives a little. You're not like them, she says. It comes out quiet, almost reluctant. He doesn't answer immediately. I was made by them, he says. That's not the same as being them. She sets the drive back on the table. Let's finish this. They stay up until 3 in the morning. Zanaya makes the tea this time, properly without being asked. And they sit on opposite sides of the table with documents between them. And what happens over the next few hours is something neither of them has language for yet. It is not friendship. It is not romance. Though the charge is there, undeniable, neither of them acknowledging it. Both of them aware of it the way you are aware of a word sitting on the tip of your tongue that you choose not to say. It is something more fundamental than either of those things. It is two people who have both been carrying something enormous. Discovering that a table between them and a purpose in common makes the weight somewhat more bearable. Zanaya talks about Nkechi, not the story, not the journalism or the documents or the operation, but Nkechi the person. The way she laughed too loud in quiet places and was completely unapologetic about it. The way she took her coffee with too much sugar. The way she had called Zanaya 3 weeks before she died and said, "I found something, Zena. Something real. And I know it's dangerous, but I can't walk away from it." And Zanaya had said, "Nkechi, please, for once in your life." And Nkechi had said, "I'll be careful." She had said it with complete conviction. The way she always said things she believed. She wasn't careful enough, Zanaya says. Not bitterly, just accurately. She was up against people who specialize in finding the gap between careful and not careful enough, Jae-Hyun says. That is not the same as her failing. Zanaya looks at him across the table. You're more thoughtful than I expected. You keep saying things like that. Because it keeps being true. She wraps her hands around her cup. What was your brother like? The real version, not the one in the files. He considers this for a moment and gives it real consideration, not the reflexive summary. He was soft, not weak. There's a difference. He cared about things that I had learned not to care about. He would spend 20 minutes talking to the woman who cleaned his office. He remembered everyone's birthdays. He could not walk past a stray dog without stopping. A pause. He was the person I would have been if I'd had a different 20 years. Or if someone had protected you the way you were trying to protect him. He goes very still. No one protected you, she says. Not cruelly. Observationally. The way she says most things. No, he agrees after a moment. My father's version of preparing me for his world was... It was efficient. It removed certain things very completely. Like what? He is quiet for a long time. Long enough that she starts to think he won't answer. Uncertainty, he says finally. The ability to not know something and be all right with it. The room for things to matter that don't have a strategic value. He looks at the table. Those things don't make you a better operator. They make you a more vulnerable one. My father fixed that in me very early. Zanaya is looking at him in a way that is different from how she has looked at him all week. Less fortified. And now? She asks. You just destroyed your entire life. Everything you built. Everything you were part of. Yes. And those things, the uncertainty, the room for things to matter, they're coming back, he says, very inconveniently. Something in her expression, finally, and it breaks open into something that might be the edge of a smile. Just the edge, gone quickly. Good, she says, and returns to her tea. And what follows in the next 24 hours is the most precise and deliberate thing Jae-Hyun has done in his life. And his life has not been short on precision. Woo-sung works through the night compiling, organizing, verifying every transaction, every death, every connection to Minister Han, every shell company, every falsified contract, every eliminated witness. It is a structure so baroque and so confident in its own invulnerability that Jae-Hyun understands, looking at it laid out completely for the first time, why his father never feared discovery. He never imagined anyone inside the family would have the will. The files go out at dawn. Woo-sung sends them to 11 journalists across 4 countries, Korea, Nigeria, the UK, the United States. And he sends them to international financial investigators and to an anti-corruption organization operating out of Brussels. He sends them in a format that is complete and documented and immovable. By 7 in the morning, the first story is published. Jae-Hyun reads it on his phone, standing in the kitchen while the twins eat breakfast. He reads it twice. Then he sets the phone face down on the counter. He is not ready for what it means in its totality. Only for what it means in this kitchen, with these children eating rice porridge across the room. Amara looks up from her bowl. Is it done? He looks at her. Almost. She nods and goes back to her porridge with the calm of someone who has been waiting for this specific moment and is content to let it arrive in its own time. By 9, it is the second most trending topic in South Korea. By 11, Minister Han has canceled all public appearances. By noon, Chairman Park's legal team has issued a statement calling it fabricated. By 1 in the afternoon, 3 of Chairman Park's former associates have begun calling lawyers. Jae-Hyun is sitting in the garden of the safe house when Zanaya comes out to find him. She is holding her phone. The news is on every channel. She sits beside him on the stone bench. Not at the far end this time. Beside him. They watch the bare branches of the tree move in the small cold wind. Is it enough? She asks. It's enough. He is certain of that. The financial connections alone are enough. Everything else is... He almost smiles. It doesn't quite form. It's enough. Your father will know it was you. Yes. What happens to you now? He considers this genuinely, as though he hasn't thought about it in depth, though he has thought about little else. Legally, I'm at risk. I'm not clean. I have spent 15 years running operations that I won't pretend were legitimate. He looks at his hands. I have to answer for that. Whatever that means. That's honest. I owe you honesty. The girls deserve honesty. She turns to look at him. You know you could have handled this differently. You could have covered it up. Protected your position. Yes. Why didn't you? He is quiet for a long moment. In the kitchen behind them, they can hear Mrs. O's voice and 2 small voices answering. The girls at the table, probably folding more cranes. Because they chose me, he says finally, out of everyone in that cemetery. They walked to me. And I'd rather be someone they chose correctly than someone who lived comfortably knowing he wasn't. Zanaya is quiet. The wind moves through the garden. Somewhere in the kitchen, one of the twins laughs at something. A real laugh, bright and sudden, and entirely out of place in the weight of the last week. I'm taking them home, Zanaya says. To Nigeria, away from all of this. He nods. That's the right thing. Come with us. He looks at her. She is not looking at him. She is looking at the tree, jaw set, like someone who has said something brave and is now committed to not taking it back. Zanaya, I'm not saying forever. I'm not saying anything grand. I'm saying you've just destroyed everything you knew, and I don't think you should be alone while you figure out what comes next. She turns to face him then, and her expression is complicated and earnest and complicated again. The girls like you. That is not a small thing. They don't like anyone easily. I have things to answer for here. I know. I'm not asking you to run. She looks at him steadily. I'm asking you when it's settled, when whatever needs to be answered is answered, to come find us. He looks at her for a long time. There's something in this moment. In this cold garden with this woman he did not expect, and the sound of children laughing inside. That is the most honest thing he has encountered in years. Maybe longer. Something without agenda. Without performance. He hasn't been sure for the past few days that he deserves it. He isn't entirely sure now, but he says very quietly, I'll find you. She stands up, looks down at him once. I don't take too long, she says, and goes inside. 3 days later, Zanaya and the twins are at Incheon Airport. Jae-Hyun drives them himself. He does not know why he expected this to be simple. He is accustomed to compartmentalizing, to moving from one situation to the next without the previous one reaching into his chest and taking hold. He's not accustomed to the particular difficulty of watching people walk toward a departure gate. At the gate, Amara and Amari stand in their coats with their small bags, solemn and watchful. Zanaya checks their documents one more time, not because she needs to, but because it gives her something to do with her hands. Then she steps aside to let them say goodbye. Amara goes first. She walks to Jae-Hyun and wraps both arms around his waist, the way children hug, completely, now without self-consciousness. He puts one hand on the back of her head and holds her there for a moment. She smells like the cocoa Mrs. O made them for the road. He notes this, and then the noting part of his brain goes quiet, and there is only the weight of a child choosing to trust him. When she steps back, her eyes are bright. Not crying, just present, the way she always is. Amari is next. Her hug is shorter, more businesslike. When she steps back, she looks up at him with those impossible eyes. "We were right about you," she says. He crouches down to their level. "Were you afraid?" he asks. "When you approached me at the funeral?" The twins look at each other, the private conversation, the one without words. "No," Amara says. "Why not?" "Because Mommy told us," Amari says. "She said that when you need someone, you look for the person who is lonely in a crowd. She said that person still wants to be chosen." She tilts her head. "You were the loneliest person at that funeral. And you weren't even sad about your brother yet. That's how we knew." Jae-Hyun is quiet for a moment. "She was very smart," he says. "Yes," says Amara. "She was. She would have liked you," Amari adds. She says it the way she says most things. Matter-of-factly, without decoration. But it lands like something enormous. He straightens up. His throat is doing something unusual that he chooses not to examine closely. Zanaya is watching him from a few steps away, one hand on each girl's shoulder now. She holds his gaze for a moment. And in that moment, something passes between them that neither of them has put into words because neither of them is ready to. But it is there, so it's undeniable and patient. "Thank you," Zanaya says. Just that. 2 words. But she means the whole of it. The safe house, the nights at the table, the morning in the garden, the choice he made when he could have made a different one. "Thank you," he says back. And he means the same kind of whole. She takes the girl's hands and they walk through the gate. He watches them until they disappear, Amara turning back once to give him a small serious wave, Amari not turning back at all. Amari has already decided the next chapter. He stands in the airport, full of noise and movement and strangers and the specific, ordinary chaos of people going places and coming home. And for the first time in a very long time, he does not feel like a man waiting for something dangerous to happen. He feels like a man who has just started something. And he doesn't know what. He doesn't know if he deserves it, but it is a beginning. He turns and walks back through the airport. 2 months later, Jae-Hyun Park cooperates with investigators. He is not the only one. The cascade that begins with the published files brings down 2 of Chairman Park's senior associates in the first week. In the second week, Minister Han resigns, a terse statement drafted by lawyers, citing personal reasons. No one believes the personal reasons. That is the point of such statements, not to be believed, but to exist on record as an alternative to the truth. Chairman Park is formally charged in the 6th week. He sits in a courthouse and listens to the list of offenses with the same expression he has worn his entire life. The face of a man who considers himself above the consequences being described. Han Jae-Hyun reads the coverage from his new apartment and thinks that it is possibly the most honest his father has ever looked. Finally, the mask and the man are the same thing. Jae-Hyun's own legal situation is complicated, ongoing, and honest. He has a lawyer he chose specifically because the lawyer told him in their first meeting that cooperation does not mean absolution. He did not want a lawyer who would tell him what he wanted to hear. He has had enough of that. He does not try to escape. He sells the penthouse. He is surprised by how little it costs him emotionally. The things he thought he was attached to, the height, the view, the silence at 34 floors, he was attached to none of them. He was attached to the version of himself who needed them. That version is in the past now. He moves somewhere smaller, on a street with a corner shop and a tree outside the window and neighbors who do not know his name. He sleeps better than he has in 15 years. He reads more. He is learning, slowly, what an actual life feels like, rather than a performance of one. One evening in the 2nd month, he opens his phone. A message from Zanaya, just a photograph. 2 little girls on a beach in Lagos, legs in the surf, laughing at something off camera. Amari's whole face is open in a way he has never seen. The watchfulness gone, replaced by uncomplicated joy. Amara is mid-jump, feet off the sand, arms wide. Behind them, the Atlantic stretches golden in the late afternoon light. He stares at it for a long time. Underneath, Zanaya has written, "The girls say hi, don't take too long." He sets the phone down. As he looks out the window at the ordinary evening street, he allows himself, without protection, to feel something he has not felt in a long time. The sensation of having something to move toward. Then he picks the phone back up. And he starts looking at flights. But before we finish, the night before the airport, as Jae-Hyun sat packing in the safe house, Amari came to find him. Alone. Without Amara, which was unusual enough to make him pay attention. She stood in the doorway, and she looked at him with that expression she sometimes wore. The one that was older than 8 years old. "There is one more thing," she said. He turned to face her. "The man with the phone, at the accident. The one who gave the orders." She folded her small hands together. "Well, we told you his name was a man from your father's group." "Yes. We didn't tell you all of it." He waited. "He wasn't just giving orders," Amari said. "He was crying. While he gave the orders, he was crying and giving orders at the same time." A pause. Like he didn't want to. Like someone was making him. Jae-Hyun went still. "Did you see his face?" he asked. "Yes," Amari said. "Did you recognize him?" Amari looked at him. In the quiet of the room, the only sound was the distant city. "Not then," she said. "But I do now." She held his gaze for 1 second longer. Then she turned and padded back down the hallway in her socks, leaving him with an unfinished thought and a door that was not quite closed. If you made it all the way to the end, we see you, and we appreciate you more than you know. And this story has been a long time in the making, and we poured everything into it. If this moved you, shocked you, made you lean forward even once, please hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who would love this kind of storytelling. Share this with one friend who you know would be up watching this at midnight, unable to stop. Drop a comment and tell us, did you trust Jae-Hyun from the beginning? Or did he have to earn it? And what do you think Amari knows? Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on notifications, because the twins still have a secret. And we're not done.